Number 10. Nightwing and Harley Quinn. So this one is low cause, well, you probably heard about this one thanks to a little movie called Batman and Harley Quinn. In this, Harley and Nightwing hook up, there's no other way to put it. This is after she beats him in a fight and ties him to a bed and then turns around and notices that things are standing to attention and decides, well, let me just have my way with him. You know, if the scene had been reversed, we would not be talking about this the same way, which is why I defy the double standard. This was creepy for me, uncomfortable, he couldn't say no. I hear you, oh, he was into it. Again, reverse it. Would you be saying the same thing? If yes, congratulations, you're not a hypocrite. I'm so aggressive today. I blame Harley. I'm channeling that Harley energy.
Hey, wait, is it true you used to be Robin? Huh, ain't that a kick in the pants? Little boy wonder all grown up.
Harley isn't exactly the most stable, but this isn't the only time we've seen these two hook up. This also happened briefly in Grayson, where she actually identified him by his kiss. Grayson was an interesting series, so much cheesecake pretending that that level of overt thirst happened in other comics. Man was molested and attacked by vampires. I've read all of Grayson. I was the target audience, I think, and they got me. It's fine, it happens. Number 9. Superman and Poison Ivy. So this is pure coercion, no romance. No romance, or is this a consensual hookup shenanigans here? This occurred during Hush, and Poison Ivy used her pheromones and, well, pheromone kiss to control him. I'm telling you, Superman is susceptible to these things. Now some say he's not more susceptible than others, why are you harping on it? However, when someone is nearly invulnerable, all weaknesses stand out all the more. So here Ivy controlled Superman at the behest of Hush, and for the overall plot. Now some people just remember this cause, well, it's an iconic look. That's a good reveal when she wraps herself around him and is all like, oh, the gasp, I can't believe this is happening. The art in Hush was just really good, regardless of how you feel about everything else. Number 8. Power Girl and dceu. That's right, you heard it here first, or probably later. This happened in the world's finest comic that was between the Huntress and Power Girl. So this occurred in the New 52 and had to do with Earth 2 shenanigans. So how did this happen? Well, again, this was kind of clandestine. She didn't know she was hooking up with dceu at first, and there's a great cover with a cell phone, and I'm putting it up, you can see it. So he was posing as Mr. Terrific, who had been exiled to Earth 2, and used that as a chance to make his move and actually succeeded in getting Power Girl to be his girlfriend. So he must have something going on in the personality department. I'm just kidding. She was already drawn to Mr. Terrific. He wrote it in that pre-existing goodwill and relationship. And well, this was short-lived, and Power Girl was furious when she found out. He was just trying to find his way back to Apocalypse. This is if people going and coming from Apocalypse doesn't spell doom for us all.
Moving on to number 7, Thanos and HELA. Okay, sure, these two are super villains and not technically superheroes, but hear me out, people. Their coupling would be amazing. Like a serious coupling, not just like the stuff that we actually have seen of them in comics so far. Now, listen, Thanos was obsessed with Mistress Death. HELA is the Asgardian goddess of death. How have they not knocked boots yet? Thanos is a big sucker for romance. His actions in the 1991 Infinity Gauntlet comic are courtesy of his love for Mistress Death. He collects all of the Infinity Gems and then wipes out half of all living beings in the universe just to show her how much he loves her. And she still rejects him. The comic, which is brilliant might I add, spends a good chunk of time prior to its big conflict showing us how disappointed and angsty Thanos gets when Death shows little to no interest in what he does for her. It's wonderful. I mean, not for Thanos, but you guys, yeah. So why not love someone else who's all about death and nihilism? We're talking HELA, who rules over Nilfheim and Hell. Now, in the comics, they've shared a kiss before, but their main mutual bond is the fact that they're both seeking out power. But hey, maybe they should give it another go. Get some power, get some love, and talk about death and the fact that existence is bleak and sad. You know, it could totally work. Or is Thanos' obsession with his one true love, death, just too strong for him to cast aside? I mean, get over it, dude. Moving on to number 6, Black Widow and Scarlet Witch. Okay, so this one's a shout out to Lucy from Beyond the Screen and Top 5 Scary Videos. This one is solely a pairing derived from a desire to see the two of these characters hook up in the MCU. Now sure, it's a little bit of an obscure ship, but there is a whole lot of fanfiction online that screams otherwise, people. So, aside from them being like totally hot together, why do we think this couple will work? Well, if we are looking at the MCU versions of these characters, you could argue that Natasha's cool, collected calm is something that could go a long way in helping Wanda, similar to how she calmed down Bruce Banner in Avengers Age of Ultron. Wanda struggles to control her abilities, and Black Widow exudes confidence and control. Meanwhile, Scarlet Witch could very well be the one to help Nat chill out a little bit and enjoy life more in between saving the world and coping with the crippling responsibility that comes with that job. I mean, it's kind of all moot now since the MCU Natasha is dead as far as Endgame was concerned, and Wanda is running off to hang out in the Disney Plus series WandaVision with, obviously, Vision, unfortunately. So the chances that we'll we'll ever see this ship come to light is pretty much slim to none. Really, I would just settle for just Scarlet Witch not being with Vision. I'm sorry, I just like, super subjective opinion here. Don't ship it at all. Moving on to number 5, Hank Pym and literally anyone willing to love Hank Pym. Hank Pym has the worst luck in comics when it comes to romance and just generally existing. He had a real rough period in the 80s when he became schizophrenic, transitioned into the superhero Yellow Jacket, caused a ruckus, went on a mission with the Avengers where he attacked a foe who had surrendered, got court-martialed because of that, then came up with a scheme to not be court-martialed and prove his worth to his fellow Avengers, but really it would have just put them in grave danger for no reason, and then when Janet objected to said plan, he beat her. That last bit is one of his most well-known and obviously controversial panels, which led to a long-time declaration amongst fans and pop culture aficionados that Hank Pym is a woman beater, and they're not wrong, but he also has a lot of mental health issues that were never really properly addressed in the 80s. Not making an excuse there, it's still terrible what he did, but yeah, whole picture there, just so you guys know. Now for the most part, Hank has had a lot of problematic relationships, and while Janet is endgame for him as far as many are concerned, he struggles to hold on to any sort of romance in general. And recently, at the end of 2018, Tony Stark and Janet rekindled their relationship while Hank was busy being a skin jacket for Ultron and having his soul devoured by the demonic entity Devondra inside of the Soul Stone. Yeah. And I mean, if he wasn't having his soul devoured, he'd probably be really salty about it. Back in 1982, Tony and Janet got together when Hank was in prison after his whole stint as Yellow Jacket being court-martialed. So really, at the end of the day, all we want to see is Hank with anybody, and Hank happy in a relationship. Is that too much to ask? Moving on to number 4, Batman and Catwoman. Holy crap, why couldn't they just get married? Seriously. Honestly, at this point, we would just love to see Bruce Wayne in a long-term relationship with anyone. Sure, he's brooding and paranoid and what have you, but hell, that would make for an amazing B story. Bruce struggling to make things work in a marriage while being the goddamn Batman. Anywho, the history between these two dates back all the way to Batman issue 1, when Catwoman first debuted as the Cat. And right from the get-go, the two of them wanted to jump each other's bones. Batman literally says the line, I quote, "Quiet or Papa Spank." I mean, yeah, it was the 40s, but come on, that is pretty aggressive flirting right there. Then by the time Batman issue 15 rolled around, Robin was even calling out his caped partner for being into their cat-like foe, to which Bruce responded, "Patience, my lad, you're too young to understand these things." I'm pretty sure he got it. Bruce. Now despite this, the closest they would ever get to kissing, I mean him and Catwoman, not him and Robin, would be in 1966 in the Adam West Batman television series, which brought Catwoman back into the fray after a long hiatus prompted by the Comics Code Authority restrictions. Now minus a marriage between the couple on Earth 2 in the 70s, the two of them have just flirted a lot, made out quite a bit, got engaged, and then didn't get married. Full circle now. That being said, DC is releasing a new Batman Catwoman crossover series, so maybe there's hope after all for a permanent romance between these two, or a long-lasting one. Or maybe a marriage, that would be nice.
Number 3, Supergirl and Lex Luthor. Now Supergirl has had some intriguing romances, with Brainiac 5, with her horse, Comet. That was when he was posing as a man. But the Lex plot was a bit disturbing. At first it appeared she was with his son, Alexander Luthor Jr., which would have been okay. But then it turned out that Lex was inside his son's body posing as his own son. But this Supergirl was slightly different, she was known as Matrix, there was other Earth stuff involved, it was pretty convoluted. However, Luthor wasn't even with her because he wanted to be with her, it was because he wanted to develop clones of her, which is pretty standard Lex fare, just look at Connor. Clones everywhere. But that's a relationship ender, so she dumped him back in 1994. Number 2, Wolverine and Mystique. So remember when Wolverine was all no sloppy seconds? Well, he doesn't mean it, because he ended up hooking up with Mystique, even though I guess technically he was the first. It doesn't matter, it's still a gross line. The two actually met back in 1921, and she used him in a bank robbery, but these two would always drift together because of, well, their connection and the fact that they've both been around for longer than other people, and will be around for longer than other people after too. They've also moved in the same circles, kind of on opposite sides. They just kind of fall into each other, sometimes, but it rarely lasts. Too much bad blood and history between them. Mystique has her beliefs, and Logan has his angst and his pain, and the twain very rarely meet. But this is one that some fans would like to see more of. Would you? Let me know down below. And number 1, Batman and Nocturna. let's be real, I have a hard time seeing Batman turn down many of his rogues if they propositioned him. If you wrote it right, you could probably get away with it. He really wants to see them get better, to see the light. So at one point in his history, he had a relationship with Nocturna. This is pre-Crisis Nocturna. This plot, oh man. So Nocturna became one of those people who was entangled with both Bruce Wayne and Batman, but she also got into a custody battle with him for Jason. She was a surrogate mother to him and even adopted him. And you know what she didn't do? Sleep with him. Looking at you, Talia. But she didn't want to take Jason away from Bruce, so she proposed the next best solution in her eyes, an actual proposal. The two would get married and be Jason's parents together. Poor Jason, just being used as a pawn. She was actually in love with Bruce, and they did get married, but obviously it did not last. Number 10, Sue Storm and Dr. Doom. We're gonna start off with one you may be more familiar with, and that's Doom using his God Emperor powers to create a patchwork world of the colliding multiverse. This world was called Battle World, and in this world he met a version of Sue who fell in love with him and started a family with him. They had 2 children who they named Franklin and Valeria. So basically he was like, F you Reed, I've got your life. How's it feel? And Reed was like, feels bad, man. I'm gonna grow a beard. Now this hasn't been the only time Doom and Sue have been together. On Earth 99315, these two were married, and Doom was a hero, and Sue was Baroness Von Doom. Though some fans speculate this Doom was actually Reed. There was an upswing in people considering these two after Doom was able to be the method by which Sue Storm's miscarriage was retconned into the birth of a healthy little girl, who Doom then named. That's why their daughter is named Valeria, and Doom is her godfather. Fun fact. She even left them to live with him for a while. Number 9, She-Hulk and Juggernaut. This happened during Chuck Austin's run on the Uncanny X-Men, a run that is disliked by many fans, and in it we had one of those reformed Juggernaut sightings. So Jen becomes attracted to him, and the two hooked up, and destroyed a hotel room because they're both big and muscular and it's funny. This also happened when she was his defense lawyer. Ethics, what are those? Other writers would not be down for this and relegate it to an alternate universe Jen, because main verse Jen would never. I don't know if we can say that. I mean, Star Fox? Is Star Fox worse or better than Juggernaut? I don't know. What's the metric? Dan Slott would be the one to be like, it's okay guys, false alarm, nothing to see here. But there would still be a gross line of Wolverine telling Jen after she hit on him that he doesn't want Juggernaut's sloppy seconds. Ew. Also, but you'll take Sabretooth's? Where's the line, Logan? I mean, James. Number 8, Nightwing and Mirage. Nightwing over time has developed a reputation for being a hunk in the DC universe. All the people adore him. Him, Dick, not Rick. So during the New Teen Titans run from the 80s, the villain Mirage took a liking to him, but knew she didn't have a shot. Not only does Dick not have a savior complex villain fetish like Batman, but he was dating, nay going to marry Starfire at the time. So what did she do? She tricked him into being with her by turning into Starfire. He had no idea, and then when he found out that he'd been assaulted, the rest of the team called him a slut. Teen Titans go. Mirage was there at first to kill Donna Troy, to stop her son in the future. She was supposed to seduce Dick as part of the mission, but she really enjoyed it. She gave him a mullet and that Deathwing costume. Oh, Deathwing, what a time. Number 7, Possessed Raven and Starfire. So this occurred during the New Teen Titans run in the 80s, and during this arc, Nightwing and Starfire were getting married. It was huge, we've been building up to it. Well, it didn't happen because Raven crashed their wedding hard. And a Raven who was full on in all hail Trigon, I can't wait to rule the universe mode. But here's the thing, it's what happened when she crashed it that was, well, it was a lot. There was some very suggestive things going on, some BDSM things, like with her forcing Starfire onto all fours and yoinking her hair back. Then she kisses her and is all, dear sweet Coriander, of all those I've taken, so far you have pleased me the most. This while straddling her. How did this get past the code? I have so many questions. Is there a non-R-rated way to read this? Because if so, I'll accept my new home in the gutter. No judgment. What do you all think? It's a lot of a lot, right? Number 6, Catwoman and Nightwing. So this one is, well, it just happened. I mean, I'm perplexed by this. Does Catwoman fall more into an anti-hero vein? Sure, most of the time, but making out with your main squeeze's son is pretty icky. There were some hints it was to make Batman jealous too. Who are you, Talia? Well, Bruce has a type, I'll give him that. Nightwing was as perplexed as I was. But he went with it, because that was his characterization at the time. Fun fact, not really actually, but writer Devin Grayson, who would write the arc in which he was raped, would initially blame him for it, only to apologize years later and say she hadn't thought the plot was a big deal. I'm not over it. Anyway, Catwoman and Dick, they made out. Next number. Number 5, Blink and Annihilus. Blink is an interesting character who I have a huge soft spot for because of the Exiles, but she's here because she had a romance with Annihilus, who is a classic Fantastic Four villain. Blink initially comes from the Age of Apocalypse, and took up with the amnesiac version of Annihilus. This was in the negative zone, but he called it off when he felt himself beginning to revert back to his original personality, as he really did care for her and didn't want to hurt her. This would be a relationship that would stay with Blink, and when she had the opportunity to attempt to save him, she would take it. However, these days, this is more of a forgotten romance, and for most of us more of a someone was with ANNIHILUS? What? When? Why? Number 4. Ravager and Superboy. This one is a pure fake out. Now Ravager was a supervillain when she first debuted, unstable, working with her father Deathstroke, but over time she joined the Titans. Deathstroke's kids in the Titans, it's a thing. Well, except for his first kid, you know, getting enhanced by the Hive and dying, which started off Deathstroke's whole I gotta kill the Titans thing. Now Ravager is more frequently portrayed as a member of the Titans, or coming around to them very quickly. Now this pairing, her and Superboy, is teased on the very cover of the issue, and just look at Superboy's face, it looks like this is the worst thing that's ever happened to him. But haha, this Ravager was a fake. This wasn't the real Ravager, which I'm fine with. Ravager and Superboy, well, Connor, Superboy, there is more than one now. It's all more confusing than it needed to be thanks to them hyper-aging John Kent, Clark and Lois' son. Take that, Lady of Queen X mentality. Still, this was a thing. They kissed. It counts. Ha!
Up next at number 3, Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes. Stucky. The shipping of Captain America Steve Rogers and his best pal Bucky Barnes is one that runs deep. Ever since Bucky returned as the Winter Soldier in 2005, there's always been a devoted group of fans who have wanted to see them connect on a romantic level. Their backstory is so ripe with grief and loss and sorrow, and with Bucky returning as a villain, it made things so much more complicated, so like obviously you want to see them hook up. Despite the villain thing, Steve still persisted, wanting to get through to his old friend who was now significantly closer to his age. And then came along their MCU adaptations. Steve would give up everything, including his life, to save Bucky, putting himself at risk on several occasions to try to save his friend. They connect on a level that no one else really understands, being from the past stuck in the present in a world they never really felt like they fit into. Even if you don't ship them romantically, their friendship in both the comics and the films is something that's hard to not acknowledge as special. Hence why the ending of Avengers Endgame stung for many. Steve barely said a word to Bucky. But arguably, they're so in sync that Bucky just knew what Cap was thinking. They don't even need words, you guys. Remember, even when Cap had nothing, he always had Bucky. Ugh, my heart. Up next at number 2, Captain Marvel and Valkyrie. Sure, this is definitely a product of the hype that comes from shipping their MCU counterparts, which, might I add, actors Brie Larson and Tessa Thompson have openly stated that they ship the hell out of their characters. But it's also a ship that could totally work, and one we'd definitely love to see happen both on screen and in panel. Both are strong, badass women who have had their fair share of struggles over the years, and both are hardened leaders who arguably are stubborn as which would make for such an amazing slow burn flirtation lead up / chase story. I mean, how could you not be in for that? Just look at the fan art, guys. In. And last but not least, in at number 1, Batman and Wonder Woman. Okay, so compared to our Bat-Cat number, this is a controversial pick. If anything, Superman and Wonder Woman are a more appropriate choice here, but A, they're super boring, because Superman, and B, those two have properly hashed it out, and Superman ultimately belongs with Lois Lane, as far as some people are concerned, despite being a colossal asshole to her during the Silver Age. Remember that? It was pretty fun. Not for her. Batman and Wonder Woman have occasionally engaged in flirtatious behavior, but like many of the couples on this list, they haven't given it a proper go, minus that hot second in the 2003-2004 JLA storyline, The Obsidian Age, in which the two shared a spur-of-the-moment kiss that they then pretended didn't really happen and then got weird about after the fact. But last year, while Bruce was engaged to Selina, he and Diana almost kissed in Batman issue 39 after the two spent time in a realm in which time moves significantly slower than our own, meaning it felt like they were in there for decades together. Now the two of them held back in a series of really sexy panels, with them noting that no, they can't, not ever. Bruce declares his love for Selina, and Diana is all like, yeah, Steve Trevor, he's great. Sure. In the past, there's also been some serious tension between Selina and Wonder Woman because of Batman, creating a wee bit of a loose love triangle for the three of them. And on the flip side of that, in the early 2000s, in both the comics and the Justice League animated series, it was often implied that there was some sort of unspoken love triangle between Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman. Regardless, the Wonder Bat ship is one that doesn't look like it'll set sail anytime soon. But imagine what it could be. I mean, based off of that almost kiss, count me in. Starting us off in at number 10, Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. Alright, so Harley and Ivy are a pairing that would have made the top spot on our list if it wasn't for the semi-recent announcement that the two are actually canon. Now, we finally got to see them as a couple, but here's why they are on our list. That was cruelly whisked away from us, sort of, by their constant on and off again nature. We've yet to see them at their full potential potential as a couple, although the romance has been fully realized in some alternate universes. The two of them actually got married in Injustice 2, so that's pretty darn dope. But we'd kill to see a proper romance between the two of them on Prime Earth, and one in which neither of them are a crutch for the other. Imagine having them both fully realized, fully complex characters finally giving their relationship a proper solid go. Yeah, that's kind of the dream, isn't it? And at number 9, Kingpin and the Blob. This couple is courtesy of one of our editors, Dylan, who responded with this pairing as soon as I asked her office who they'd like to see hook up. Now, you may be wondering, Kingpin and the Blob, what? Just visualize it. Just visualize it and you'll know. You'll get it. Moving on to number 8 and something more serious, Jessica Cruz and Simon Baz. Alright, so this one comes courtesy of my fellow nerd host Sasha. Jessica and Simon are both Green Lanterns who first met each other in Green Lanterns Rebirth issue 1. The two worked to investigate an alien intrusion which turned out to be a manhunter, and surprise surprise, the whole event was a training exercise that Hal Jordan had orchestrated for the two of them to learn to work together as a team. And oh boy, did it start something. Now the relationship these two have is pretty wholesome. They both became Lanterns around the same time, they're both incredibly supportive of one another, and Baz is especially supportive of Jessica's struggles with anxiety. Their partnership is fantastic, and we can't help but fall in love with the idea that maybe one day they'll fall in love with each other. Although Jessica did recently kiss Batman and it was kind of weird, but like, I'm willing to just forget about that. Because he clearly did.
Number 7. Iron Man and Madame Masque. Now comics love to give heroes a villain to tempt them if they can, to increase the drama. In Tony Stark's case for a while, that was Madame Masque. It wasn't uncommon in early Iron Man for the ladies Tony loved to either be secret or blatant villains. So Madame Masque, Whitney Frost, yes she has another name but I don't feel like butchering it. These two would come to know both of each other's identities and start a romantic relationship. Madame Masque was moved by the concern Tony showed over her face. She's down for people who don't care about her scars. It is sweet, but this would all break down when she had to choose between him and her father. And she found that she just couldn't. She and Tony still have a complex relationship, but it's not as romantic of one. Number 6. Jason Todd and Talia al Ghul. Let's squick you out. Now at the time this happened, Jason was not a superhero, but he would be if you count Red Hood like that. And he was Robin before, so haha, take that, it counts. So initially, after Jason was resurrected officially after the fake out Hush resurrection that would then turn out to be real, complicated yes, Jason would have a backstory of being taken from the streets by Raish, who was training him to use against Batman, but he was a bit more of a brain dead husk than who he used to be. Then Talia took pity on him and put him in the Lazarus pit. She was treating him as a mother figure would. She took him under her wing and trained him, but she would then tell him about Tim Drake, the third Robin, to get him all riled up, and also tell him how Batman had at that time taken out her father, and that she needed him to punish him for her. Then she had sex with him. Yeah, that's pretty squicky. You're like a son to me. Punish your father for me. Nope. I'm out. Number 5. Nightwing and Shawn. So after Rebirth, Nightwing was relaunched, and there was some attempts to give him a new love interest, not Starfire, not Babs, who were doing different things at the time. Someone new. Enter Shawn, who was a real minor villain. The comic even at times calls her an activist. So she would graffiti things, and she was called the Defacer. Is it the Silver Age? Because they want their character names back. In Rebirth, he was supposed to have met her while he was still working with Batman, but despite being essentially a tag artist, she was a match for Dick in every way because of her father. Her big plot with Dick was that she was maybe pregnant. Pregnancy scare. Dun dun dun. This relationship did not end up lasting. Number 4. Scarlet Witch and Doctor Doom. This comes to us from Avengers: The Children's Crusade, a miniseries where we see the young Avengers seeking out Wanda because Wiccan, her son, through complicated retcon, has begun to experience his own reality-altering powers. So he wanted to make sure he didn't, unmake the universe. So when he finds out she's at Doom's castle, he goes to rescue her, only to find her in Doom's colors, which in comics is an instant romance cue. You change your color scheme, you might as well go buy a house together. In fact, when Wiccan asks if she's okay, she says, yup, she's marrying Doom tomorrow. So she's great. Baroness Von Doom, here we come. But it turns out that this wasn't a genuine courtship, which is a shame since the two do have a lot in common. Instead, it was Doom who was manipulating her to be with him in a bid to keep her sane, and keep her away from the memories of her past self, the whole no more mutants thing, also House of M. This was to make sure she wouldn't wipe out a whole species again or almost wipe them out. But Wanda remembers, and actually after a bit of finagling goes back to Doom, but not romantically, but for help, because he's such a master sorcerer and all, but there seem to be some lingering feelings there. But the ritual they have to do turns Doom back into Hot Doom, which we can never have, that's not the status quo anymore. So he poofs out, so broken up, I guess? I would have been down for more of this though. Number 3. Storm and Dracula. Dracula was super into Storm, wanted her to be his queen vampire queen. Why do people in comics always turn this offer down? I'd be all, pick me, I volunteer, which is why I never get picked. Too keen. You gotta act like you don't want it, like a cat. Uncanny X-Men number 159, he went full Dracula on her, seduction. He does turn her into a vampire for a bit, and we get this great annual cover of her living her best vampire life. But well, this didn't last. She managed to shake the vampirism off, and I for one was sad. But we have the whole alternate timeline and what if where she stayed a vampire. This was, I'm biased. I love me an evil powerful queen, and that is Storm to a T when she gets like this. I just love Storm. I'll take any Storm I can get, even 80s punk rock Mohawk Storm, aka the coolest Storm. Dracula used to be cool, now he's kinda whiny and begs for dates. But he married Deadpool's ex-wife, so maybe he's happy now. I don't know, probably not. Eternity is a long time. Number 2, Thor and the Enchantress. This gets to be high up because this could have been a great love. In an AU story, these two were married and had a son. Happily married, no Sue and Reed shenanigans here. Enchantress at this point wishes she was the woman Thor loved. Amora, not enough people say her name. Amora is her name, not the woman that Thor loves. That changes. Right now it's the She-Hulk? Now this developed over time. She was initially sent to take out Jane and worked with Loki to seduce Donald Blake, Thor's human form. But she came to care for him, but well, that's not the best first impression, is it? And Thor has a whole slew of lovely ladies throwing themselves at him, so she has a lot of competition, and Thor's not really one to dabble too much in dealing with the villains. He's not Batman, that's for sure. These two, there's something there. I just want more of a spotlight on Amora.
I wanted thy love, not your death. Please, please come back to me.
And number 1, Doctor Doom and Storm. Oh yes, Doctor Doom is at it again. He's trying to find that Baroness Von Doom. Will no one help him warm his drafty castle and listen to him lament about the death of his mom? Someone stay with Doom. Uncanny X-Men number 145. This issue sees the two of them having a candlelit dinner together, and even though it's part of a Doom plot, he finds himself drawn to her, particularly her confidence and lack of fear around him. The way she acts as though they're just equals, and he's super into it. And she seems to like him. She's like, Doom is a fascinating man. And he's like, she's drawn to me like a lioness to a lion, like a queen to a king. Wow, calm it down. Down, boy. He ultimately goes through with his plan with Arcade, but not before saying he finds her enchanting, but then ruining it by adding child to that. Just why, Doom? Go back to like a lioness to a lion.